I am recording, so you get to click the OK.
Yeah, I click.
Okay, so tonight we are going to actually spend a fair amount of time looking at Sefirot.
Yeah.
And actually, even just preparing for this, I've learned a lot. Um, actually, I'm going to pop it up on the screen. And you know what? I bet I can. Let's see what happens if I do this. I wonder. Well, if I can.
Oh, good. I'd like to see what this has to do with
Okay.
with the
Okay,
owner.
so I presume you can see. Okay. So, and I know some of this is going to be small, but this is a symbol, if you Google Kabbalah and look for images, you will see this image over and over and over again. And I know actually Irwin is often referring to the Sefirot and to Ein Sof. And we're going to actually talk a lot about that today, this evening. So this comes out of, we'll see in some of the background material, but this comes out of the Zohar, as I understand it. And my understanding is that the idea is that, of course, the Torah says God created humanity in God's image. And it says male and female, he created them. So therefore, in some sense, we must be created in God's image. And I often raise the question, I'm sure I did a couple of weeks ago when I said, what does that say about God and what does that say about us? So in the Sefirot, there's going to be a lot of discussion about the image of God and the aspects of God. And, just as a sort of an overview, and we're going to get into this in more detail, the idea is God is tenfold. And up at the top is, I think I even have it. Well, actually, let's see. Yeah. So actually, I'm gonna click ahead, but there's some things I want you to notice. So I have some highlighting. So one is above all of this is Ein or Ayin, and often called Ein Sof. And I know, Irwin, you're always calling our attention to that aspect of God. And Ein Sof means no thing. There is not a thing. Now that's different than nothing. You'd say nothing, well, as nothing is nothing. But no thing means there is not a thing associated with this. So whatever God's nature is, which is actually, as we'll see, above the Sefirot, it's not a thing at all. It is, I guess for the moment, I'll just say it's purely spiritual. And what we're going to see in some of these texts, which I have to say I hadn't really focused on before, is the idea is that's the part of God that we can't connect with. In some ways, what the Sefirot are, and all of this is my understanding. I bet if you talk to a real Kabbalist, they would have much deeper and more wonderful insights into this. But these are the ways we relate to God. In effect, in a sense, God is relating to us in 10 specific ways, or in 10 ways, and those are the 10 Sefirot. So one thing I just want to call your attention to, because we're going to be referring back to it again, is that actually above the Sefirot is Ayin, nothing. And then also the right here on the right hand is Chokhmah, which means wisdom, but this is also a point and it's also a beginning. And then on this side is Bina, which can mean palace and it can mean womb. And Bina is also another word for knowledge. Chachma is wisdom, Bina is understanding. And one of the things that we're going to see is, and again, I often mention the idea that Kabbalah gets very sexual. It's interesting we don't have any women today. Kabbalah gets very sexual, and the idea is that a point, almost like a sperm, from God comes into Chachma, and that gets implanted in the womb of Bina, and then gives birth to the 7 Sefirot, I should say, below. So we have this idea I mean, I think, as you know, 10 is an important number in Judaism, but also 7 is a very important number in Judaism. So the 7 lower Sefirot are ways that we can much more easily relate to God. And then down toward the bottom, you have Yesod, which means foundation. It's also called the Tzaddik, the righteous one, covenant, and also a phallus, a penis. And then down at the very bottom is Shekhinah, which is the queen, Malchut. And I think, as you know, Shekhinah is often referred to as the female aspect of God. So that's kind of a quick overview. Here is a much more intensive, a larger vision of this. And what I'm going to do is read from a book. I was thinking of just putting this up on a screen, but I thought it would be just easier to read from it. And I'll show you the book I'm reading from. It's Larry Kushner's book on the way into Jewish mysticism. So he's saying this figure shows how the 10 Sefirot are traditionally arrayed in a diagram, above or within or around, basically anywhere but not in the Sefirah, is Ein Sof, the infinite one of all being. Creation begins with the top 3 Sefirot, or the head. Just page. The first, here comes Kimberly. So the first Sefirah is Keter, the crown. The second and third are Chochmah and Bina, and these are modes or ways of knowing. The fourth and fifth, Chesed and Gevurah, are the arms, but also represent the dimensions of parenting, both of which are indispensable in the formation of a healthy child. The sixth is Tiferet in the center. It's the torso and functions as a harmonizer and is therefore also associated with beauty. Tiferet literally means beauty. The seventh and eighth are Netzach and Hod, are the organs in this description of sexuality. Everything is balanced like a circus act on top of the ninth Yesod, the foundation, which is also called Tzaddik, a righteous person. Think of it all being born by one good person. And finally, at the bottom we arrive at Malchut, our world, the community of Israel, the Shekhinah, or the feminine indwelling presence of God. The left Sefirot, Bina, Gevurah, Hod, are feminine, as is Malchut at the very bottom. The right Sefirot, Chochmah, Chesed, and Netzach, are masculine, as is Yesod. One curious surprise is that, contrary to Western sex role stereotypes, Gevurah, rigor, and stern judgment is seen as feminine and maternal, whereas love and mercy are seen are portrayed as masculine. Professor Daniel Matt once wryly suggested to me, this is Larry Kushner speaking now, that this may have begun because the author of the Zohar had a very interesting mother. The Sephirotic system is at the heart of the Zohar and all subsequent Kabbalah. Not only do the Sefirot correspond to parts of the human body and the psyche, but since they represent the core structure of being itself, they are present everywhere. For Kabbalists, each Sefirah is represented by a character in the Hebrew Bible. All the stories of the Bible are also about happenings within the Sephirotic realm. Each color of the spectrum has a Sephirotic counterpart. The result of all of this, as Professor Arthur Green of Brandeis University has suggested, is that with the Sefirot, the Kabbalists have effectively created a new language. And this is the Sephirotic diagram. So again, I don't expect you to internalize this. I haven't internalized it. And I've, read this a million times, but I just want you to get a sense. So when we think of God, we can think of God's aspect of wisdom and love and power and and splendor, prophecy and eternity and beauty and compassion and so on. And so those are the ways that God interacts with the world. And the image here is to create different places of emanation that God interacts with the world until we finally get down to Shekhinah, and that's God's presence in the world. Yeah, Erwin.
Yeah, if I may interrupt you, I took out some notes when I was studying, and if you allow me to read a short
Okay.
segment of it, is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. The meaning, the Sefirot, the meaning is emanation, Ketzirah. They are representing creation, each corresponding aspect of human nature. Sefirot are in the interconnected with divine energy from work, spiritual, work and spiritual. Sefirot to translate God's energy into infinite quantity, into the finite work, pairing male and female nature. And that's just, this is just a very short part because I spent about.
We're actually going to read an article on this subject. It's not a long article, but also is going to shed some more light on it. And one image that I've seen, and we'll come back to, is at the creation, God pours God's essence into these Sefirot, which then interact with the world. Because God is so far above and beyond anything in the world that it's impossible for God to relate to the world directly. It's just too great a chasm.
I think that all comes from Keter.
Well, Keter is the top. So
all the energy to the Sefirot comes from Keter.
So I would say my understanding is the energy, the essence comes from Ein Sof, comes from God's essence, which is outside the Sefirah, and then God pours God's essence into the Sefirot, and they trickle down. And there's one great image because each of the Sefirot have a different color, but it's not that God's essence takes on a color, but it's like clear water being poured into vessels of different color. It looks like they're a different color. So God's essence is going through different vessels, and it takes on the character of the vessels, and that's the way God interacts with the world.
Yeah, and also I think I believe that it's very important that it's completely balanced. The left and the right is completely balanced.
Yes.
And I don't know if this is just my speculation, that when Leonardo da Vinci drew the picture of the man, which has arms stretched and lying down on the floor or wherever it was, and that picture also is completely balanced because if you measure the hand stretched from one end to the other end, it corresponds the height of a person.
Okay, yeah, I don't know about that, but absolutely we'll see the idea of balance being important. And one of the areas that people will comment on is that if people let their aspects get out of balance, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So let me see what's the next one. Okay, so Erwin, you're especially going to enjoy this. Okay, so you may know the opening of the 121st Psalm, which starts out as Esa enai el he harim me'ayin yavo ezri. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
Okay, so it says, Esa enai, I lift up my eyes, el he harim, to the mountains. Me'ayin yavo ezri, from where will my help come? And then the next line is Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. My help comes from Adonai. Okay, so that's the standard translation of this psalm. But in the great tradition of translating in different ways, another translation is may ayin yavo ezri, from nothing will come my help, namely from Ein Sof. So a Kabbalist reading the same line in Hebrew can have a Kabbalistic translation and interpretation from this, equating God as no thing, as above and encompassing the Sefirot. Me'ayin, there's ayin, Yavo Ezri, from nothing, from no thing, from Ein Sof will come my help. So this is actually from this book, The Way into Jewish Mystical Tradition. This is a great book. I didn't even know I had it until I read an article which had a reference to it. And then I found out, lo and behold, I had it, and I started reading it, and it was wonderful. And I looked in another place in my library and realized I had 2 copies of it. So I've already, I'm giving it to a friend of mine. But this book is a guided tour of the Jewish mystical tradition, which is organized around 50 mystical ideas. And it actually came out of a course that Larry Kushner taught to rabbinical students. So it's at a, it's a pretty sophisticated discussion, but it's very, very good. Okay. And then, one of my comments is about this, and this is Abraham Abulafia, a 13th century Spanish mystic. Just as the Gentiles say he is 3 and 3 are 1, so also some of the Kabbalistic masters believe and say that the Godhead is 10 Sefirot and the 10 are 1. So this is sort of maybe a humbling reminder to Jews who look down at Christianity as embracing the idea that Christianity isn't really monotheistic because of the Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. In some ways, with the Sephirotic system, we actually think of God as having 10 different kinds of emanations, whereas Christians focus on the 3. Okay, so now we're going to read an interesting article. So I think I need to, let's see, I bet you won't see it if I just pop this up, but let's see. Oops, where's the article? Oh, I think the article is here. I lost the article. Oh, hang on, maybe find it here. Not there. Whoops, I lost the article. Oh no. Hang on, I think I have a way of recovering. No, that's not it. Hang on. Actually, let me stop sharing. So, whoops, sorry. I had this article. I don't know what I do with it. No. There it is. Okay, got it. Okay, so I am going to find you again and go to screen share, and there it is. Okay, so I presume again you can see the article. Yeah. Yes. Hello. Yep. Okay, good. Okay. So the Kabbalistic conception of God, the medieval mystics made a distinction between the infinite, unknowable God and God's revealed aspects. Okay, so Henry, would you like to read the Kabbalist introduced?
Sure. The Kabbalists introduce a distinction between the hidden and revealed aspects of God. The hidden, infinite aspect of God is called the infinite, the Ein Sof, without end. This name was understood as the proper one for the hidden aspect of God. It suggests that God exists without implying anything about his character. According to the Kabbalists, God should be called it, capital I-T, rather than he, although there is no neuter gender in the Hebrew language. Actually, because of the great sublimity and transcendence of God, no name at all can be applied to the infinite. The name Ein Sof conveys only that God is unlike anything we know. According to these mystics, Ein Sof is not the proper object of prayers, since Ein Sof has no relationship with his creatures. The personal aspect of the hidden God is mediated by the 10 Sefirot, 10 knowable aspects of his being. There are therefore 2 natures of God, the infinite, unknowable essence, and the 10 discernible aspects. The word Sefirot originally meant numerals and was taken from the earliest Hebrew text on the nature of numbers and letters. Sefer, it's
Yetzirah,
the book of formation. Sefirot is a generic term. That means that the aspects of God's being or the instruments of God's activity can be counted. There are 10 Sefirot, just as there are 10 cardinal numbers. Some Kabbalists explain that the word comes from the Hebrew root sapir, to tell, implying that these aspects tell us about God. Others have suggested that it derives from the Hebrew word for sapphire.
Sapphire. No.
Sapphire. Oh, okay. Like the stone. All right. Since the Sefirot illuminate our knowledge of God like a precious and radiant gem. There have been a variety of aspects to translate
A
Sefirot.
variety of attempts.
Okay, you're right. There have been a variety of attempts to translate Sefirot into English. They have often been called spheres, radiances, or other occult terms. The Sefirot, however, are numerically identifiable symbols of the various aspects of God being or activities. A more faithful English rendition would be calculi, a word that signifies both a means of reckoning and the use of symbols. Since there is no good English translation of Sefirot, the use of the original Hebrew term is still preferable.
I've never heard of the term being translated as calculi, but being a student of math, I like it.
Yeah.
The Sefirot are the bridge across the abyss, the connective tissue between the infinite God and the finite world. They are the link that makes it possible to maintain God's absolute unity while preserving the relationship between God and man. They, and not Ein Sof, are the object of human prayers. By differentiating between Ein Sof and the Sefirot, it is possible to say that God is incorporeal, immaterial, and unchangeable, while still adhering to the traditional notion of the personal God. All anthropomorphic and anthropopathic references, i.e., references to God that use human physical and emotional descriptions, and the traditional notion of an active, personal God refer to the Sefirot. All the statements that imply corporality, composition, and change in God refer to the Sefirot, not to Ein Sof. The Sefirot, not Ein Sof, is the God of the Bible. Therefore, a Kabbalist can justifiably claim that Ein Sof is nowhere mentioned in the Bible. The Bible refers only to the Sefirot, the knowable God, not the hidden God.
Yeah. So this I found very interesting, and I have to say this is the first time I've come across this idea. So I think so clearly expressed that the Sefirot are a bridge in a sense, which connects the absolutely unknowable God. I mean, if God is so far and above everything we can think about, then in some sense, God must be unknowable and not being able to be connected with humanity. So the Sefirot are that bridge. And I love it. You know, the Greeks talked about the gods or God as the unmoved mover, which basically sets up, you know, the universe and so on, and then hands off. They don't get involved. And Abraham Joshua Heschel, you know, a philosopher from the last generation or two, referred to God as the most moved mover, that God cries with us, and that's sort of the anthropathic. And God is very much involved in our lives and reacts to us and speaks to us and guides us and teaches us and suffers with us. That's a very different kind of God. So what the Kabbalists are saying is that connection is the Sefirot. Okay? I think
Rabbi,
yeah,
can I ask you,
sure.
when the flood appeared and Noah was on the boat with all the whatever he took with them, and then one of the parsha says that there was a gem or a stone which emanated light in the boat. Where
Yeah, that's
went,
Midrash. That's not in the Bible.
that's a midrash. And also, I don't know, maybe I am wrong, but I think when God created Adam, he created Adam from nothing.
From the dust of the earth.
Well, you know, that's
Oh, that's important. It's not from nothing.
but
He
I think
created
it's
he created
seriously.
Adam from the Adamah, and it's a pun in Hebrew, and it's also, you could say, a pun in English. You could say he created the earthling from the earth. So he created Adam from the dust of the ground and blew the breath of life into his nostrils, and
Yeah.
Adam became a living nephesh. But that personal aspect of God, the mystics would say, are the Sefirot, not the Ein Sof. The Ein Sof is unknowable. Let's see. I think one more paragraph, Henry.
Okay. The theory of the Sefirot is an attempt to explain how the infinite God can have a relationship with the finite world and how an unknowable God can be known by man. The relationship of Ein Sof to the Sefirot can be illustrated by drawing an analogy between the soul and the body. The soul, which is invisible and unknowable, dwells within the body. Although there is only one soul in each body, the soul acts through a variety of physical organs. The soul is therefore the essence that uses the body for its activity. The manner in which the soul is connected to the body is still a mystery. Nothingness,
Nonetheless,
we claim to know that there is a soul, even if it remains inscrutable, because its incorporeal nature. Likewise, Ein Sof dwells within the Sefirot, which are the instruments by which God relates to the world.
okay. So this article I found helpful,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna stop sharing for a second and go back to the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I like
Okay.
it.
Let's see from the current slide, and whoops. No, I don't think you can see it yet, right? No,
No,
no.
No,
Hang
nothing's
on,
on it.
hang on.
There's
I don't
no
know what.
writing on the screen.
Yeah, I don't know what
all
happened.
I can see is the five of
Okay,
us right
hold
now.
on, I'll find it. Okay, there we go. Okay, now I bet you can see. Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay, good. Okay, so that's a whole category of Kabbalah. And we've spent about a half an hour on it. And typically when I teach a class in Kabbalah, I can't spend nearly that amount of time, except here's a symbol. You can buy images of it in your local Judaica shop, and good luck with it. And even then, we're just really beginning to skim the surface. So, so, uh, so now I want to move on to gematria. Remember the understanding, getting back to the basic idea, and the basic idea is that the Bible, the Torah, is infinitely deep in meaning. And one of the ways that we're going to try and puzzle out God's secret code, you don't have to send in, box tops. Remember when you got secret decoder rings and, I don't know, Little Orphan Annie's decoder? I don't even know who had the decoder rings, but here is one of the decoder rings for interpreting the secrets of the Bible, and that is gematria. And this is a very simple form of gematria, where the letters, this is just the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, and you list them in order, and the first 10 go from 1 to 10, and then the next letter, Kaf, is not 11, but 20, and then 30, 40, and so on to 100, Kof, and the next letter is 200, and then 300, and then 400. So there's a lot of problems with this. I mean, how do you write 723? It's a problem. And actually in the year we're in the year 5,785, I think. And so writing even the year is a problem. So there's all kinds of problems here. And I'll just point out that there are lots of gematria systems. I once had a little computer program called the Gematrilator, and you could calculate different gematria. So this is a simple one. And by the way it works is you put the letters next to each other and you add them up. So I think most of us know that 18 is Chai, right? You've heard this?
Mhm.
Okay, because Yud is 10, and Chet is 8. So Chet Yud Chai is 18. So in the Ashkenazi world, you give, gifts and so on in units of 18. By the way, in the Sephardic world, you give units in number 5 because it refers to Chamsa, which is a whole other subject. But there are gematria systems where Taf is 1 and it goes backwards. And then you can take the sums of the squares of the values of the letters and the square root of the sums of the squares. I mean, the rabbis had time on their hand and they were sophisticated. But this is the simple one. And I just want to give you some examples of how it's used. Oh, this is my favorite one. And I spent time preparing this. Rabbi Larry Kushner pointed this one out. If you actually read back in Exodus 20, and it says the community heard God's voice. And so there's a lot of speculation in Midrash and mystical tradition. What is it that they heard? And sometimes they say it was only the first commandment. And then others say, no, that would have been too much for the people to endure to actually hear God's voice. So they say it was only the first word. And then others say it wasn't even the first word. It was the first letter, Aleph. And of course, one of the interesting things about Aleph is it has no sound. Although some would speculate that the sound of Aleph is the sound that your vocal cords make just as they are beginning to make a sound. So that's the sound of Aleph. And Larry, I went to a class with him where he was teaching this, and he said, when a newborn infant is about to cry, and they take a deep breath, and there's nothing, and they're holding it, and then all of a sudden this wail comes out. Just before the wail, that's the sound of Aleph. Okay?
Yeah.
Jerry, welcome. This is a deep mystical interpretation of the letter Aleph.
Thank you. I could tell.
Okay, so there's the letter Aleph. So Rabbi Horowitz of Rubshitz, I don't even know how to pronounce it, taught in the name of his teacher, Rabbi Mendel of Remenov. Adonai, God's name starts with Aleph. We know that, right? Adonai, the name Adonai starts with an Aleph. This, he says, hints at the face of a human being. Okay, so now I'm going to, through this tradition, show how the Aleph is the face of a human being, and it's also the name of God. Okay, there's nothing up my sleeves. Are you ready? Here we go. So there's the Aleph. Now I'm going to take this part of the Aleph and I'm going to turn it upside down. I'm going to take this part of the Aleph. I'm going to pretty much leave it, and I'm going to move this bar to the middle. So that's okay. So that's gone to there. This has gone to there, and that's gone to there. Everybody with me? And now I'm going to draw a circle around it. So that's the image of someone's face, right? 2 eyes and a nose.
Yeah.
Okay. But wait, there's more.
Jewish.
Oh, there goes Paul's jaw. I'm so happy.
It is dropping. It is dropping down. I could just feel it.
Okay. So the Yod, if you remember, has the value of 10. It's the 10th letter. The Vav has a value of 6. And here's another Yod, that's 10. That's 26, right? That's the value of this dissected Aleph. But wait, Yud He Vav He also has the value of 26. Okay, Yud has the value 10, He is 5, Vav is 6, and He is another 5. Okay? So, this is from this book I just showed you. Therefore, every face is the image of God. So therefore, this is one of the meanings of being created in God's image. When you look at a face, you see the eyes, which are yuds, and the nose is a vav. And so the value is 26.
Wow.
Okay, wow is right. And there's actually a whole article or a discussion of that. And the other thing, which is really interesting, which I kind of love, is when I studied this with Larry, he said he heard this from one of his teachers, but he could never find the source of it. One day he's at the HUC Happy Center, Okay, he wants to make copies from something in a book he has. And he's at the machine and it's making copies. And he's, being a curious guy, he's looking around the table and he sees stacks of other things that other people have copied or an assistant is copying. And right at the top is an article about this subject. And that's how Larry finds the source of this teaching that he only heard about. Okay. So now I want to talk about also the gematria of the talit and the tzitzit. So in the Torah, it says when you wear a garment with 4 corners, on the corners you should put tzitzit, which is variously translated as tassels or fringes. But the Torah doesn't tell us how to tie the tzitzit. So a tradition developed, this is actually an Ashkenazi tradition, as follows. There's a corner of a talit. So here's the talit. It's prayer shawl. It should look pretty familiar. And at the 4 corners, there are tzitzit. So the way you tie it is you actually have three. You actually have 4 long threads.
Oh.
One's actually longer than the others. And if you're doing it traditionally, the long one is blue, and you thread it through the hole, and then you make a double knot. And then you wrap the blue thread, or sometimes I think it's called the shamus, around the other 3 threads 7 times. You make another double knot, and then you wrap around 8 times. And then you make another double knot. And then you wrap it around 11 times. And then you make another double knot. And you wrap it around 13 times. And then you make another double knot. So if you grab one of your talesim, your talitot, if you grab your talis and you look at the fringes, chances are this is exactly how you will see it.
Yeah, but without the blue thread.
Well, the blue thread is traditional. I have one with a blue thread. And you just got to buy that kit, and it costs more than buying one with just the white threads. And the story with that is in the Torah it says with a blue thread,
Right.
But for about 2,000 years they couldn't figure out exactly what dye to use on the blue
Right.
thread.
That's right.
And then somehow they discovered that it's this interesting snail produces the blue color. So you can go online and buy a tzitzit kit and tie your own talit. When I was at Temple Narami with the bar mitzvah kids, I would have a tzitzit tying class. Kids would make their own talis with artwork and so on, and then we would tie the tzitzit. So here's the gematria. Okay, hold on, Paul. Support your chin. Okay. So here's
my chin.
So here's the word tzitzit. Tzadi yud taf. Tzadi has the value 90. Yud is 10, Tzadi is 90, Yud is 10, Taf is 400. You add them all up, you get 600. But there are 5 knots in each tzitzit, so we're going to add 5, and then there are 8 strings at the end of your tzitzit, so we're going to add 8. So we add it all together, and we get 613 mitzvot. But wait, there's more. The first group is 7, which is the number of days of creation, right? The second group, 8 windings, is 8, the number of days for Brit Milah,
Yes,
for circumcision. The sum of the first 2 groups is 15, 7 plus 8, are the first 2 letters of Yud He Vav He. The third group is 11, which is the last 2 letters of Yud He Vav He. Vav is 6 and He is 5. The fourth group, 13, is the value of Echad. So Echad, Aleph is 1, Chet is 8, Dalet is 4, the total value is 13, right?
Yeah.
So the total of the windings, 39, is the gematria of Adonai Echad, which is, as we discussed before, probably the most significant statement for the Kabbalists in the Shema, that God is unity. And then while we're on the subject of Echad, you have Aleph, Chet, Yud. Aleph stands for the one talit. Chet is 8, the 8 strings in each tzitzit, and Daled is 4, the 4 corners of the talit. Okay, so I mean, because what the Torah says is, when you look on the tzitzit, you will be reminded of the commandments. So you had to tie the tzitzit in a way that would remind us of the commandments. The simplest one is the 613. Okay, so a little more. I'm going to carry this at least through the end of the tzitzit, and I know this is going to be hard to read. So this is from an Art Scroll Siddur. It's an Orthodox Siddur. So in the morning service, it says here, and I know you probably can't read it, it says, many recite the following declaration before putting on the talis. Okay, L'Shem Yechud. For the sake of the unification of the Holy One, blessed is he with his presence, and fear and love to unify, the name Yud K with Vav K in perfect unity in the name of all Israel. Now, the Yud He Vav He is so holy that this book is not even going to write the He there. They're going to write K because they don't want to write He. Okay. And now he says, Hareini, I am now ready to wrap my body in tzitzit, so my soul, my 248 organs, and my 365 sinews be wrapped in the illumination of tzitzit, which has a numerical value of 613. And so the rabbis believed, this is the note. Nice thing about the Art Scroll Siddur is it has lots of footnotes. I know you can't read this. My 248 organs, my 365 sinews, the sage's computation of the important organs, 248, is equal to the number of positive commandments, while the 365 sinews equals the number of negative commandments. This symbolizes the principle that man was created to do God's will. So this is what we say before we say the blessing, which here is in English: blessed are you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments, the Vitzivanu lahitatef batzitzi, and has commanded us to wrap ourselves in the Ashkenazi in tzitzis. Okay, so it's this idea of unifying God. We're doing this, and actually in the Hebrew, it's the unification of Hakadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed is He, and His presence, and Shekinato. So it can actually, depending on how your mind works, can get sexual, because it's talking about unifying God and Shekhinah. Let's see what I have next here. Okay, I think many of you know that very traditional Jews, they'll wear a talit when they're praying, but because the commandment actually is the commandment says, when you look upon the tzitzit, you'll remember the commandments. It is considered to be a daytime obligation, although people will wear it at night also. And there's something called a talit katan. So when you see people walking around, including Ken Elman in our congregation, Temple of Dad Elohim, wears tzitzit all the time. And it's like an undershirt, but it's a 4-cornered garment, and it has a hole that you poke your head through, and you can, and it has the tzitzit attached. You think there's only one way to tie a tzitzit?
Oh,
well, here are a bunch of them. And it actually doesn't even have the one that I was thinking of. So if you look for Ben's Talit shop, you could find different ways to tie your tzitzit. And so the one that we were just talking about is this one, 7, 8, 11, 13. But a traditional Sephardic tzitzit has Yud He Vav He. So Yud is 10, Vav is Yud is 10, He is 5, Vav is 6, He is 5. So you'll find Sephardic tzitzit with the 10 windings, 5 windings, 6 windings, 5 windings. And then there's these other ones, which I never knew till I started just looking online. So there's lots of different groups and different ways to tie your tzitzit.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
also when you put tefillin on the morning, you put 7 times
Yes.
on your arm.
Yes. Yep. 7 also is a magic number.
Yeah.
Okay. So even the shapes of the letters hold secret meanings. We talked about the bet before, but here's one of my favorites. Consider the Hebrew word for truth,
Emet.
which is emet. I think you know this. You say it actually after the Givorot.
Goat.
So look at the shapes of the letters. Never mind the meaning, anything else. Aleph is very stable, sits on 2 feet. Mem is even more stable, extended base there, and Taf equally stable. Okay, it's very well balanced on a firm base. Furthermore, Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Taf is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and Mem is the middle letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So it's hard to imagine a word more physically balanced than emet, truth. Now consider the word for lie, sheker. Now I have to admit, I did some creative searching for the right font because not all shins are wobbly. But at least in this font, the shin is very wobbly on that rounded point. The kaf is even more unbalanced on like a toe, like a ballet dancer. And the resh also incredibly unbalanced. Okay. And shin, kaf, and resh are the 3 penultimate letters of the Hebrew alphabet. The taf we know is the last letter, but it's kuf, resh, shin, taf. That these 3 letters are way at the end of the Hebrew alphabet. So it's hard to imagine a Hebrew word that is more unbalanced than sheker, the word for lie. So even the shapes of letters convey secret meanings.
So Rabbi, why
Yes.
do we put shin on the box of
Because it stands for Shaddai.
Shaddai?
It stands for Shaddai, one of the names of God. And
Oh,
by the
yeah.
way, the shin on the head tefillin has
Yes,
4
yeah.
branches.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever noticed. A normal shin like this one just has 3 branches, but the shin on the tefillin, because there are 4.
The reason for that is because the heart has 4 separated areas.
4 chambers. I like
4
that.
chambers.
But also the head tefillin has 4 chambers
Yeah.
because there are 4 separate scrolls in the head tefillin. Okay, I like that though, the heart. Okay. So now I'm going to go through this again. This is not going to be on the quiz, so I don't expect you necessarily to remember it, but any sort of introduction to Kabbalah should at least speak of the 4 worlds, the 4 olamot, levels of spiritual awareness. And some would say they correspond to different levels of the soul. But first, we're going to talk about the soul in a later class. But here are the 4 levels of the world. At the lowest level is Asiyah. We have this word oseh, which makes. Asiyah is the world of making, of doing, of awareness. This is the world in which we live our lives and understand our own separate identity. It is a world far from mystical insight. In this world, we perceive God as a transcendent other, outside ourselves, the object of yirah, which, as you know, I always think of as 2/3 awe and 1/3 fear, as a trusted and loved and loving king. So in the normal everyday world where our car won't start in the morning and we got to wash the dishes and clean up after the pets and go to work and stuff, that's the level of asiyah. And God, in this sense, is thought of as a king, that we are, and very much as a father image, that we're in awe of, and there's also some measure of fear. So that's the most basic level of awareness. One level above it is Yetzirah, which is formation. We have the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara, the inclination. It's Yatzer Yotzer or creates light. It's a word for creation. Yetzirah. In this level, we begin to lose our sense of separateness, recognizing that there are higher forms of life or deeper rungs of perception. God is perceived as a loving parent who knows and loves us fully, who accepts us with all our shortcomings, but who also cares enough to make demands upon us. The symbol of the world of Yetzirah is the angel, which is sort of an entity which goes back and forth from God to us. To Yirah is added, to fear and awe is added ahava, love, in our relationship with God, who becomes Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. So that's a parental aspect added to the kind of the strict ruler aspect. Okay, the next level is Beriah, which is creation. The first word of the Torah is Breshit bara Elohim. The verb bara is create, and it actually only refers to God's creating. There's a separate word for creation. That's not when God is creating. Here we begin to see the great vision that there is only one reality, that there is only one capital O. Love is the dominant motif in the relationship between God and person. God as parent is replaced by God as lover, a la Song of Songs, described by Rabbi Akiva as the Holy of Holies among Scripture. We studied at one point the Song of Songs in great depth. I think I have it on my website. I'm not sure. I should put it on there if it's not. And it's erotic love poetry, which Akiva and others said is really an allegory between the love between God and Israel. But it's sexual love, it's erotic love, not just maternal or paternal love. At this stage, we vent to our longing for reunion with the source, capital S, to embrace the embrace of our soul in the arms of the beloved. I hold fast to him, and I will not let him go until I brought him to the house of my mother, into the chamber of her who gave me birth, from the Song of Songs. The Zohar is a key source for insight into this world. In this world, however, there is the consciousness that I am still present. I am the one who perceives this reality. I am the one who is longing for God. So there's me longing for total connection and embrace with God, and there's still God. And somebody is coming in. And then at the fourth level is Atzilut, which means flowing. So it's the fourth Olamot, the highest level of spiritual awareness. In Green's word, this is all from Arthur Green's book, A Kabbalah for Tomorrow. In Green's words, here the lines between self, small s, and self, large s, no longer exist. Macrocosmic universe and microcosmic mind are a pair of mirrors that stand opposite each other. They reflect one another so fully that any attempt to distinguish between them has to be left behind. In Atzilut, there is nothing other than the emanation or flow of divine grace. We no longer speak of the love between we no longer speak of the love between self and God, because between no longer exists. You are not other than God. Within the human mind, Atzilut is usually present only in brief moments, in flashes of insight that pass quickly in themselves, but remain with us in memory to light the rest of our lives. So this one, the highest level of spiritual awareness, is described by Green as only momentary elements. And I think we discussed this a little bit in our discussion. Only momentary elements, just moments, when we seem to lose ourself and we have a connection with God. And the idea of me and God disappears. And that's that image I showed, I think either last time or a couple times ago, that it's not me down here and God up there. It's God is everything. And for a moment, I lose the idea that I am even separate from God. And again, so I want to just present this because as you continue to do some readings in Kabbalah, you will see lots of references to the four worlds. Let me see, I think. Okay, so I'll do one more, I think one more element. This is also from Arthur Green, about the two different names of God that we find in the Bible, certainly in the Torah, Adonai and Elohim. Adonai. Adonai is the name we say when we read God's actual name, Yod-He Vav-He, in the Torah or prayer book. So God's actual name is Yod-He Vav-He. We're not certain how to pronounce it. And because it's so holy, we don't even try to pronounce it. So we just say the word Adonai. Adonai literally means my Lord, but it's actually plural. Another interesting element of Adonai. If it were simply my Lord, it would be Adoni. But the fact that it's Adonai, and of course, there are no vowels in the Torah, so you can't distinguish between them. But when the Masoretes edit it, they put Adonai. Adonai literally means my lords, and is said because the actual name was only pronounced by the high priest in the Holy of Holies in the temple on Yom Kippur afternoon, i.e. once per year, and not since the temple was destroyed in the year 70. Traditional Jews will not even say or write Adonai except when reading the Torah from the scroll or actually praying. In a traditional Torah school, if we were teaching the kids to pray, we wouldn't teach them Baruch Atah Adonai, because we would only say the word Adonai when we're actually praying. So we would say something like Ad Hashem. And I remember that occasionally has come up in synagogues where I've worked. Where am I? The mystics see meaning even in the shapes of these letters. Big surprise. In Arthur Green's words, the name Yod-He Vav-He embraces the entire Sephirotic world. There's the 10 Sefirot. The letter Yod, the smallest of all letters, represents Chachma as the primordial point. Remember, I talked about Chachma being the point, almost like a sperm, like a seed that comes out of Keter. So Yod represents that primordial point, the beginning of existence. The tip of the Yod points upward, hinting at Keter. An essence so elusive that it cannot be captured in writing. The first Hey, graphically depicted as an open structure, is Bina, primal female into which Yod enters. A Hey is an open box in which the Yod can enter. I'm going to mute. Let's see. Was there a question or was it just muting? Okay. Vav stands for the number of 6, representing the 6 forces centered on Tiferet. It also represents the elongation of a Yud. Take a Yud, stretch it, it becomes a Vav. And thus becomes a phallus-like embodiment of male energy within God. The second Hey, again female, is the home of the Vav, the Ark of the Covenant, and also the home of the soul. The numerical value of the name 26 is the subject of much comment. For example, both the words Ahava, love, and Echad, one, have the value of 13. Love and oneness, therefore, are joined to make up the name of God. As a reminder not to pronounce the name of God when reading the Bible, the rabbis, this is now the Masoretes that added the vowels to the text, wrote the vowels for Adonai into the text around Yod-He Vav-He. If you try and pronounce the word as it's written this way, you'll get Yehovah, which is where we get the mistaken pronunciation of Jehovah. So that's Yod-He Vav-He Adonai. Elohim is the generic word for God. So Yod-He Vav-He is God's actual name. Elohim, in a way, is God's job. It's the word God. Yod-He Vav-He's role is to be God. Elohim is used to describe God and false gods in the Bible. Although the form is plural, the use in the Torah is grammatically singular. Again, in Green's words, the point is that Elohim in this context is being used as a collective. All the powers that once belonged to the deities of the pantheon, love, power, wisdom, war, fruitfulness, all the rest are now concentrated into this single being that contains them all. The mystics often assign the name Elohim to God's aspect of judgment and the name Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh to God's aspect of love. The balance to the names is found in the Shema, where the word Eloheinu is found between the two repetitions of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Shema Yisrael, Adonai, Eloheinu, Adonai, Echad. So Elohim, Eloheinu, means our Elohim, is between Yod-Heh and Vav-Heh. So this is Arthur Green's commentary. I don't know what I have next. Okay, we're going to get now into Kabbalistic texts, but I'm going to stop sharing here. And ask, do any of you have questions that you can actually formulate into the English language? And
I have just one comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was at Chabad for about 10 years. At first, I didn't know anything about what was happening. I mean, I just listened and did nothing. But as I got more and more into it and more trained into the idea of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh and all that kind of material, I connected with it. I connected strongly with it, and it made me feel good inside. I walked around with the idea that God is with me. That's what I felt. I felt it all my life. I felt it before even I went to Chabad. I felt it a long, long time. And I think that's one thing that makes that helps me to understand how to behave with other people, because those ideas that were given to me by Chabad teach me how to behave as a human being.
In what way did it teach you? Because okay, you feel at one with God.
Yes.
Now, how does that teach you to be fair in the marketplace?
Not in the marketplace, but how I react to other people.
Okay.
That's what it does. How I react to other people and how I see other people reacting, and go to them and give them either some kindness
and in what way does this teach you to react to another person?
It gives me a base that I can go back to and say, this is what I learned. This is what I understand. This is what God is about, because I heard about it. This is what God is about to me. And I see myself as somebody who can structure my voice or my ideas to mimic that which is God to other people. That's how I see it.
Okay. What I was trying to get you to say is, what specifically does it tell you to say about to do to other people? And
I don't know if I have any specifics.
Okay.
I don't have any, but I can mimic that. I don't have a specific idea of what it does to me, but I can mimic what I heard. And
so what I would say is, and I'm going to share it again. What I would say is this, that every time you look at a face of another person, you see the image of God.
I do.
And even the numerical value of God.
I can see that. Yes, I can.
And so that's the power of this Kabbalistic idea. And what interests me is, what's the best way of getting this across? So what I would say is, I'll contrast two very different ways. One is my way, okay, which is very intellectual. Let's teach it. Let's study it. Let's understand it. Let's explain it. Let's have a discussion. Let's go back and forth. That's my way. Another way is you just attend services, starting when you're 3 years old. And by the time you're 13, 14, 15, or 16, you are with a group. And it's so powerful being there. And no one ever explains it to you. You're just there and you're just doing it.
You just absorb it. It's like absorbing ideas inside.
And I am not disputing that is, an ineffective way of doing it. It's definitely not my way. I really want to understand it.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. You're a Zoom user. I apologize. Yeah, it's you. You raised your hand before, I think, right? Nope.
Oh,
Yes,
this
maybe not.
lady or this
Yeah,
lady
go ahead.
on
Yeah,
the,
please go
on the
ahead.
bottom, on the right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I
Did
have
you have
my,
a question or a comment? No. Yes, you. Go ahead.
Me?
Yes,
Huh?
yes.
Yeah, I think it says Adonai Eloheinu. It means God, you tell, for all of us. Eloheinu is,
Our God.
yeah, our God, Adonai Ehad. One God is for all of us. And I think this means for all of the world, all of the people, all of the humanity is
Yes,
one.
yes. I don't disagree with that. And I would say that the Kabbalists go further along that exact thought and say that God is the unity of the universe. Everything is in God. So they not only is that God our God, and that's sort of the Jewish mission, is to make the God of Abraham the God we worship, but also that God is the unity of the universe. It's kind of like the binding glue of the universe. So the Kabbalists go even further, but I absolutely agree with you. Jerry and then Erwin.
yeah, I agree with Paul that that's a real powerful presence. I studied with Chabad for only 5 years, Kabbalah, but just about every person that I met just seemed to look at everybody as if it was you were that element connected to God in such a powerful way. And the joy that they express in living is far beyond what I've seen in anyone, anywhere, at any time. There is this incredible love of what God created, and they're part of it, and everything around them celebrates that.
Yeah,
It's
I agree with you. An experience I've also had with Chabad. I wish it were true. Because if you ask the women of the wall who have feces thrown on them
ugh,
and are harassed,
ugh,
and if you ask the members of a Reformed synagogue in Israel that had rocks thrown at them and
ugh.
women chased and harassed by the ultra Orthodox, um, I wish they were true to that. But
Chabad wouldn't do that. Chabad,
I'm
Orthodox,
talking. Okay,
I'm talking about just Chabad.
okay. I hope you're right. I don't have any information that it was Chabad, but it was definitely right wing and Orthodox.
Yes.
Erwin.
Yeah, when I started learning with you many years ago, I think it stuck with me one thing what you told me or told all of us there, that you say 5 things when you go outside and walk, and the God's creation. And every time I go out walking, it's not mechanical. If I see a beautiful flower or the sky is nice, it very much relevant to me. And I say thank you that I can see that and I can be part of it.
Right.
And
That's the
and
same
by
thing.
by
I do
adopting
the
that
same thing,
attitude,
Erwin. Same
by
exact.
adopting that attitude, you live daily your day in a sense of gratitude, and you
Yes.
feel continually gifted
Yes.
and grateful.
yeah, and also I just wanted to say, because I pray every morning and I put talit and tefillin on, and it makes my morning completely different because I made a connection with
Right,
Hashem.
right, right.
And that's how I feel. And maybe it's not just putting on, turning around 7 times.
Right.
I feel it. And if I don't feel it, I don't do it. That's the interesting part. If I don't feel it, I cannot do it because I'm fooling myself.
So what I would say is, some of you may have heard me tell this story. Molly and Max are living in the old country, and they're very, very, very poor. And one day, Max comes home from working, and he said, Molly, every time when I walk down the main street in town, I see these people, rich people, in the restaurant, and they're eating blintzes. And they look like they are enjoying the blintzes. They're smacking their lips. It looks so wonderful. And he says to Molly, Molly, could you please make me one-time blintzes? And they're very poor. They barely have enough to eat. And she says to him, Max, where am I going to get the eggs to make the blintzes? She says, well, do the best you can. And what about the cream for the blintzes? Molly, you're a resourceful woman. Do the best you can. And the fruit filling and all the other elements that go into blintzes. Molly, you're a smart woman. You're a resourceful woman. I know we can't afford the actual ingredients, but somehow do the best you can. And so she whips up this dish, and it looks like blintzes, and with great pride, she serves it to Max. Max takes his fork and chews it carefully and says to her, Molly, I don't understand what these rich people see in blintzes. So by that, I mean, I and you are continually acquainted with people who think religion is silly and childish and don't think there's anything there. And because if they've been exposed to anything, it's childish religion when they were children, or superstitions, or maybe just, Hanukkah and Passover, if they're Jews, and Christmas and Easter. And they think it's religion, but they haven't tasted the ingredients. You know what I see in you, Erwin, continually, and Paul, with the way you report on your experiences, you've tasted the actual ingredients. But so many people think they're tasting religion, but they don't taste the ingredients. So that's go ahead. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well,
okay.
With me, I want to say something. I walk every day in the morning, and I am in Beverly Hills, very nice places, and all the time I say, thank God that I am walking in this. But what about the people that on that time have a lot of problems? Some of in the jail, some of them don't have money, some of them, God forbid, lost something, child or father or mother or something. They cannot walk like me and say thanks God. I don't know, maybe they can.
Well, the question is, are you thankful for what you have?
Yes.
Or are you always looking at what you don't have? So even the people you see that are not doing well, they have more than 95% of the world's population. If you go to a place, I can't remember the number, but it's some huge number, 40, 50% of the world survive on the equivalent of $3 a day. And the question is, are you thankful for what you have? Or are you envious of what you don't have? Because no matter how much money you have, you can always decide, I really wish I had 2 or 3 times that amount of money. I often talk about one of my favorite blessings is the blessing you say after using the bathroom. And when you're okay. And I have run into some problems recently on that. And boy, am I saying that prayer over and over again. Because just to appreciate that your organs are working. Yes, I have pains, I have sciatica, I have, all kinds of issues, but at least things are working. And of course, in our gratitude, we have an obligation to share our resources with others who don't have it. So that's the requirement to be charitable.
I'll say one last thing. I was at a lecture with a man who wrote a book on Judaism. I forgot what the book was called. And he was one of the passages of the book was he was sitting in the back of the class and he was pretending that he was being driven in a car by God, and God was going around and driving him around and showing him stuff. I had that same experience before he talked about it. I got to the point where God was showing me what was good and what was not good, and where he's taking me and what he's showing me and how he's doing it. So I was connected to something. I was connected very strongly to the idea of what God is about. That's all I can tell you. That's what connection to me. That's connected to me. And when I see like I was talking about leaves falling to the ground and how beautiful it is, and it's really godly. It's not that the leaves are falling; it's that beauty.
Well, and one of Larry Kushner's books, which is also fairly readable, is called Invisible Lines of Connection. And we're going to get into some of those stories as we continue. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
I will see you next Monday. It's not
Thank you,
Okay.
Rabbi.
But not Wednesday. Wednesday you don't have program.
Yeah.
Wednesday, we are having a discussion, I think, of the kippah.
Okay, the same time, 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. Yeah, always 7 o'clock. Okay.
Toda
Take care.
Rabba.
Bye-bye.
I'm sorry tonight I miss first.
Okay, well, you can watch the video. Okay, bye.